All right, welcome back to another episode of the Orange Ball Podcast. Sam, Brendan, great episode for you today. We got an interview with college basketball expert Ryan Hammer. Does a great job on his social media pages. But to start, we're just going to jump right in. We got a couple more scores. We're about a week out from the college basketball season officially starting. Got some, one of the scores that jumped out to me in an exhibition match was the Duke Blue Devils. They look for real going into this year. They beat Arizona State 103-47. And I don't know, if that's indicative to the rest of the year, but obviously a whopping beating put on Bobby Hurley's crew going back to Cameron Indoor. But we also have our score from Boise State. What was the final on that bad boy?
Yeah, so Boise State went down to Provo to play BYU in a secret scrimmage, and the game actually went to overtime. BYU came out with the win 91-86. Once again, I'd like to reiterate, we're not breaking this news. This is already public knowledge. But also, one thing that stood out, obviously BYU is going to be a good team this year. Tyson had 30 points, which is pretty impressive. We all know preseason player of the year. We had him on a couple episodes ago. Make sure you go check that out. But, yeah, I mean, obviously take it with a grain of salt. Both pretty good teams, and I'm kind of excited to see, obviously, Boise State tip off November 6th, I believe.
Yeah. Hopefully be in attendance for that one. I think it's Wednesday, right? Yeah, Wednesday. Yeah. I think BYU will finish probably in that 5 to 6 range in the Big 12 in a really good conference. Mm-hmm. Really tough conference actually, with the Arizona being at and the mountain schools with Colorado and Utah are always tough to go play there. So I think that's a good score. High scoring battle. I think Boise State's offense will, last 2 exhibition games, that they've had, putting up a lot of points. So that'll be fun to watch. Kind of something that it was the last couple years have been more of a defensive minded team. Maybe this is more of a offensive, not minded. I think they're always going to be a defensive minded team, and they'll get better. But maybe not some of those 42-37 battles like we've seen a couple years ago. But I think that's a very good score to kind of gauge where you're at. BYU is definitely a tournament team, in my opinion. But what are your kind of takeaways from that?
Yeah, like you said, this team is probably one of the best offensive teams Boise State has ever had, honestly. And I mean, BYU is good, so obviously you don't never want to give up 91 points to a team, even though it went into overtime. But it's still October, and they got a long ways to go. Yeah. Everybody's got a long ways to go.
Teams will start to tighten up a lot.
And like it's secret scrimmage, you don't know what the game plans were, the subs were, so it's just fun to look at.
Yeah, it's a little eye candy, little appetizers going forward, and again next episode we'll have some legit scores. Maybe watch a couple games before the next episode. So.
I will say, if you were an Arizona State fan, I would be worried because exhibition are not losing by 70 or no. What was his final
50?
Score? 50, yeah, 50. Even though Duke is really good, but
over
50
points.
50 to another D1 school.
I think you take these games with a grain of salt, but when you are jumping to a new league like Arizona State is, and you want to be competitive, and you test yourself against probably one of the best, if not the best team in the country, that's a check. And Bobby Hurley said in his press conference, I don't think anyone's going to be complaining about minutes or how many shots are getting up, because we got a lot of work to do on the defensive side of the ball and obviously on offense. So yeah, it's tough to completely gauge these teams off of that, but there are glaring scores where you go, oh boy, that's not ideal. But
But let's get into our interview with Ryan Hammer. Like you said, content creator, college basketball analyst, and he's just a great guy. So yeah, let's get into it. All right, today, like I said, we have a very special guest. This guy is a content creator, college basketball, analyst. He has over 280,000 combined followers on social media. Welcome to the podcast, Ryan Hammer.
I appreciate y'all for having me. That's the first time I've heard that number put together. I imagine a lot of the people are the same on three platforms, but I'll take it.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. How speaking of that content, how have you gotten into content recently? Have you always been kind of in the social media space, or did you all of a sudden just decide on you wanted to start covering college basketball or sports in general?
Yeah, big sports fan growing up. Anything you can name it, football, basketball, soccer, the whole nine. I actually played soccer throughout college and even some like minor league, semi-pro stuff afterwards. So soccer was my sport. But college basketball I fell in love with when I was like I don't even remember, well over a decade ago when like Grievous Vasquez, Jimmer, Steph, everyone was playing and stuff. And my oldest brother is 8 years older than I am. So I went to Maryland where he went to school, was visiting him a ton and would go see those ACC Maryland games. And I fell in love with the sport. And then basically when the pandemic started, I just like I had a passion for the sport. I had a good understanding of the sport. It's I got X's and O's, the game, schematics and stuff, but also college basketball specific stuff like analytics and KenPom ratings and bracketology and whatever, March Madness and stuff. So I just started posting videos about sports in general. When the tournament came around, my account kind of blew up a little bit because of the stuff I was posting, and I always wanted to go that route anyway. And this is on TikTok. And I kind of just ran with it. And I've ever since then I've just been learning more and growing and trying to just take it to the next level every day and every year. So
Yeah, I feel like with all the different analytical outlets that there are now, there's like a million things that every year you kind of pick up like, oh, people are keeping this stat that's putting into the, it's
yeah,
crazy. It's every year there's something new that I learn about it too. It's crazy.
it's wild.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So like you said, you're a big college hoops fan, and I'm sure you've been to a lot of different venues, different environments. Has there been one that kind of has stuck out to you, or you have a kind of game you always remember that you've been to?
I actually haven't been to a million games. I the last like year and change, I've been going to a lot more, obviously, like traveling around the country where before that, majority of them were the New Jersey schools, Rutgers, Maryland, obviously I said that, Philly schools and stuff like that. So it which are great. They're great environments sometimes, depends where you are.
Mhm.
But it's tough. Last year I went to Baylor hosted Houston in their new stadium. It was like I want to say their fifth or sixth game in their new arena. It's small. It's very close to the court, kind of like a European soccer stadium. And they were both, Houston was number one in the country at the time, I think, and Baylor was number like five or six. They went to overtime. Jamal Shed hit a buzzer beater in regulation that didn't count. And then they went to, it was crazy. That game was wild. The fans were going nuts. It was jam-packed. Like that was a really good feel. I think that was my first ever Big 12 game. So that kind of puts things in pretty good perspective. And I'd say last year, walking into the Dean Dome in Carolina for the first time before the day before a game, there was not a single soul even like shooting around. It was just me, my brother, and cameraman, and Armando, and we just walked in to the arena, and I was just like, "Holy shit! Like this is actually crazy!" And that's like a bucket list item for college basketball nerds and fans. So.
Yeah, no, that's
That's
super
awesome.
cool. That's like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
walking into like a cathedral or
Mhm.
something.
Right, exactly. I was just like, this is crazy. Like I, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever, like I couldn't imagine it. So
What kind of travel lists you got planned for this year coming up?
a lot of it is flexible and TBD throughout the year. I know we spoke about Boise real quick right before we hopped on here, but a lot of it will change because like storylines change throughout the year, right? Like if I said I was coming to Boise and like I'm not gonna say things take a bad turn, but if I book something now for February and then like things just don't go the right way for certain schools, not that I don't necessarily want to be there anymore. It's just not as worth it. It doesn't make sense to plan things so far ahead. I am planning some things like I'm planning Alabama right now because I'm gonna guess that they're gonna be good no matter what. That's
Yeah,
my guess.
sure.
But GCU I'm going to next week, I guess. In a week from Thursday, I'm leaving. And then I know I'm going to McNeese State, which I really wanted to get to down in the Bayou because they're gonna be good. And then a lot of the other ones local, I'll go to again, Princeton, Rutgers, Seton Hall, St. John's and stuff. And then there's a long list I want to get to, but I also know that I can't go everywhere. So well, it's a lot of it's TBD.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
absolutely.
I will say, kind of on the topic of Princeton, when we, when was that? That was in Sacramento. When they beat Arizona. we were
Mhm.
sharing a locker room with them.
Oh,
So they were the game in front of us, and we saw that they won. And all of a sudden, they're like, "Let's go!" They're so hyped in the locker room.
It was a true like sports moment because we were in the middle of Princeton's locker room was right here and Arizona's right here.
oh my
And
God.
there's just here comes the rush of all these Princeton guys and they're getting the buckets ready full of water for coaches and all this stuff. And then it's just like a pin. You couldn't hear,
Yeah,
you could hear a pin drop coming in the other side. It was like, this is like totally the duality of sports right here. This is crazy and the best part of March Madness. And yeah, it was super cool though. But
That's funny.
um,
People probably don't understand that either. Like people definitely don't understand the intricacies of the tournament that you guys get. Where like, example, the locker rooms. I always talk about travel to people and how much it matters. I'm sure y'all can attest to that. But like the locker rooms being set up next to each other is actually hilarious to me.
yeah, the you can tell it's such a crazy environment being like behind there because I wasn't a player or like anything like that, so I couldn't imagine. But like, it feels like there's just so much going on at the whole time you're there, and some teams just have a real focus on we're here to play basketball, and all this other stuff is going on. We're dialed into the game.
Right.
Not that some teams don't do that, but it
Yeah.
can get overwhelming, definitely for a lot of people, I would imagine. So.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I guess, going into this year, we're finally seeing kind of the conference realignment. We've seen it kind of in football to start, and now we're get to seeing it in basketball. But, what are your kind of thoughts on, the Pac-12 disbanding into these different conferences, and which teams do you think fare best in their new conferences into this year?
Yeah, I not surprised that you kind of knew it was coming for a while, and I'm not surprised by the latter effect either of a lot of the Mountain West schools and I guess WCC schools and stuff leaving for the Pac-12 in the next. I think it's what not next year, the year after, I guess. But it'll be interesting. I think some schools will need adjustment period for sure, because in conference play at least, because out of conference like you schedule who you want, whatever, especially for basketball at least. But there are some schools like the Big Ten, for example, 18 teams, which is already ridiculous and stupid. Um, some of the schools like Washington's a good example where their team might not be good. They might be good. It's a lot of new faces, new coaching staff, new everything, and they're not as premier talent wise. So I think they could struggle against teams that just like battle hard, like the Big Ten schools, the gauntlet of the Big Ten, I call it, like Michigan State, and I guess Purdue was bigger and more physical last year, but a lot of these teams, like it is just an absolute dogfight. Like the Rutgers before this year, without the talent, they were just banging bodies all the time, everywhere. Northwestern in their little Welsh arena, like it is an adjustment in conference play, and I think some teams will take that time. I think UCLA is built like that. I think they'll be fine. USC, who knows? Every single player on the team is new, and I do like Muss and what they're doing. I do like Oregon, and then I think the Big 12 teams should be okay if they're good enough. I don't think Colorado is good enough this year. I think Arizona is obviously good. Like they'll be fine. They play a very similar style that a lot of the Big 12 teams do, I think. So I think they'll be fine. Um, but it's interesting to see them just like scatter around the country and kind of see where they all go. And it'll be interesting. I think you'll see some surprises and you'll see some games where maybe the Pac-12 teams have massive upsets, like a Utah or Washington, like I said. And then maybe Arizona gets upset by like Oklahoma State because they're not adjusted early on in the Big 12 slate and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, those are, like you said, like even in the Pac-12, Colorado wasn't necessarily this big name and
Yeah.
in the top of the conference, but teams having to travel there, that's not an easy game to have to travel and go play in Boulder or go play in Salt Lake. So those will be good games. I think it just creates more intriguing matchups into the years.
Mhm.
In the Big Ten too, teams from the Midwest going out to the West Coast teams going out to the Midwest and playing basketball, and it just creates more matchups that I think will be fun. And like you said, I'm just really interested to see which teams will be able to adjust quick enough to kind of the
Mhm.
physicality of the basketball in the Big Ten, and then even in the Big 12, a lot of
Yeah.
really good teams in that league too. So um, yeah, and what about some realistic expectations for like Cal and Stanford?
I forgot. I completely forgot. I was like going through the conferences in my head.
I
I'm like, all right, they're going to the Big 12, Big 10. I'm like, what am I missing
I
here?
know
And then the
I had
ACC.
some notes. I had notes for like all the Big Ten and Big 12 teams, and then right at the end, I was like, oh wait, I forgot about the
Yeah.
Bay
I just
schools.
like
The ugly stuff.
there's no way they stay in the ACC with the
Yeah,
Pac-12 reorganizing a little bit and stuff, and there's no way they stay there forever. I think the ACC is an offensive, more free-flowing league with honestly like the bottom of the league is just not that good. It never hasn't been for the last 4 or 5 years. I think that's very good for Cal's actually. I feel like Cal's actually going to be sneaky good. I don't think Stanford's going to be that good. SMU not from the Pac-12. Okay, I was like, there's someone else there. Cal, I think, could be decent. I like what Madsen's been doing and putting together a little bit. And I think in the ACC, you'll have easier games. Like if you go to look at the bottom of the Big 12, teams like UCF and we talked about Oklahoma State, like in the Big 10, you're looking at teams like Rutgers was at the bottom, and now it's Northwestern and Nebraska who were tournament teams last year, and they still have some of those pieces there. Where the ACC has teams, just being
yeah,
completely honest, they have BC and they have well, they had Louisville last year, but it's a little different this year. But they have teams that aren't that good. So I think that is very, very good if you're a Stanford or Cal fan to be like, all right, we're gonna win some games at some point, I hope. So
yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely. Yeah, I see a lot more winnable games for them than some of the some
yeah.
of the programs. And one of the programs like Arizona State, we already kind of saw the dismantling of what happened the other night. I don't know if that's a realistic expectation of obviously these exhibition games you kind of take with a grain of salt, but um, Bobby Hurley was pretty honest about that game in his press conference I kind of watched, so that will be
Yeah.
interesting. But another kind of key thing I think everyone goes into the year and um, kind of out of the blue, Tony Bennett retires from Virginia. And do you have any kind of coaches that you see on the hot seat going into the year that need to win now? I don't know if you have this pulled up or not.
No, I definitely don't. This is good. It's on the spot. I like it.
But
Uh
I was
I
just kind
there
of thinking, that's
yeah.
kind of a something that everyone throws out there at the beginning of the year.
No, it's and I think in the current landscape with things changing so much, not just players in the portal and things bouncing around and recruits, coaches bounce around a lot too. And people kind of don't talk about that aspect of it where people get mad about like, oh, this guy is at his third different school. I'm like, well, this coach spent 1 year at this school and now he's on to here as he should. Everyone takes it. If you have a chance to take a step up for a better job, like by all means, go do that. I'm not saying it's a problem, but people forget about that. Um, oh God, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. There's probably a long list. There are guys at schools like Ed Cooley just got to Georgetown, but at some point you want to see some success from him, especially because he's more of like a fiery guy and stuff like that. A lot of the old Pac-12 coaches that aren't coached anymore, I said last year, I would have said this year. I still think Oregon State. I think Tinkle's still at Oregon State if I'm not wrong. And I honestly don't know how, to be completely honest with you.
They've
But
just
there
completely
you go.
held on to their Elite Eight
Yeah, you're
run
wrong.
from
Yeah.
like 5 years ago.
Yeah, they
Being out
exactly.
here, that's just knowing fans of Oregon State that they've literally just said he bought 4 extra years with that run.
Good for him.
So
Good for him, I guess.
yeah,
But they have been like, it's not even like they're like, oh, we weren't that good. Like they're awful. They're terrible, and they have been awful. So, I got to imagine his seat is on fire if it's not already like in flames or
yeah.
whatever. There are other coaches like if you look at some other bigger schools, like I'm a Maryland fan. Actually, I grew up. I think Kevin Willard's got some pressure on him this year with a much better squad, high-rated freshmen, better transfers. Like this is probably not a make or break year, but it's starting to kind of get up there. And I think there's just a lot of schools with new faces, and then there's a lot of school where you kind of have to give them some leeway and some slack. And then there's a lot of guys like Izzo and all these guys that have bought their tenure for life.
Mhm.
So I don't think there's a ton of coaches, at least off the top of my head, that I can think of. I'm gonna pull up a list of teams just so I have it, make sure I'm not missing anybody anyway. But
I was just
yeah,
curious too, like they put an interim on. I can't remember his name at Virginia, but I would assume that creates a domino
yeah,
at the end of the year. Just I think that's a likable
yeah.
job for a lot of people.
Yeah.
That could
And
maybe
things will happen. Like guys will lose their job. Indiana is one I just remembered. And Mike
yeah.
Woodson's not on the hot seat necessarily, but if they don't do well with this roster, like you might as well just call it quits with him if you're Indiana. I don't know if they will, but he has to be on a warm seat at the absolute least. And I'd even say the same for teams like Texas A&M and M and Buzz Williams. I like him as a coach a lot, but like they have been underperforming for way too long at this point, so they kind of have a little bit. And then there's always more scrutiny on teams like Duke, even with Shire. He's new, he's younger, but he'll be fine. The team's going to be good this year. People were worried, but they shouldn't be.
Yeah, one of my favorite kind of parts about college basketball and just sports in general are the preseason Thanksgiving tournaments, the feast week. What are your top tournaments you're excited for, or what you think people should tune in for this year?
Yeah, those are always fun. It's like a nice little early season gift during the holiday weeks. Maui's obvious, like there's always a loaded team. I know this year, I know UConn, Auburn, Michigan State are there this year. I guess Chaminade's always there, but Maui's always the best because like it's on in the night, it's on late night, it's on when like people, college kids are home from their break, and like that's how I remember it. Love that one. I love the Players Era Festival, or the what are they called? Players Era Festival, I think, right? The
Yeah, that's like
NIL one where they're playing for
yeah.
$1 million for the kids, which is awesome. Rutgers, Alabama, Houston, Oregon, Creighton, I think like a bunch of top 25 teams and basically all top 25 caliber teams. I think that one's going to be probably my most anticipated one.
And I know they changed kind of the layout of that to actually have a champ. They were only going to have like two games apiece, and then they changed
Yeah.
it to have an actual champion. So
Like a
that'll be cool.
yeah, like a
This,
Maui kind of
yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
more of an
That'll be
actual,
a fun one. That'll be cool.
yeah.
yeah. I mean, obviously, when you look at this year, you got UConn, Alabama, Duke, Kansas as kind of the favorites to maybe run the table, make it to the Final Four. But who are some of those dark horses that you could see maybe as like a 6, 7, 8 seed make a run in the tournament this year?
It's tough to say now, obviously, because like so much can happen and change with seeding. Why there are no seeds right now, but we can talk about where we kind of project teams. I think Xavier is probably my biggest sleeper. They'd probably be a little higher than that. They'd probably be one of those like if the season, if expectations went exactly as planned, then they'd probably end up being like a 4 or 5 seed, maybe a 6, something like that. But Xavier's got a ton of experience. They basically returned their two best players inside and out duos, Fremantle and Davion McKnight. They have a crazy good backcourt of guys from elite mid majors around the country, from Toledo and Indiana State, and Furman. I think that is a team that's very dangerous to watch. Whoever comes out of the A10, whether it's one, two, three, four teams, Loyola, VCU, St. Joe's, love St. Louis, Dayton. Those are probably the five. Those are the five to watch. I think St. Louis, after what we saw with Indiana State last year, if they can actually, by being in a better conference and with the same system and a lot of the same players and coaches, if they can put that into a tournament resume and get in, that's going to be a dangerous, dangerous team to play against. Then there's teams, Kentucky and Ole Miss in the SEC. Kentucky's not really getting talked about a lot because they're not Kentucky anymore, but Mark Pope's offense is awesome. They have so many good players, like 9, 10, 11 players that would start on most power teams in the entire country. They're going to be good. I like Ole Miss's team, and I like Oregon's a pretty decent sleeper too. Love Jackson Shellstat and Kwame Evans. They're both going to break out nicely this year. So
Yeah, like you said, it is kind of hard to decide. I know like Lenardi's been doing his
yeah.
bracketology off season, like literally the few weeks after the last Final Four ended. Is what are we doing
We
here?
don't even know who's on these teams anymore. Like,
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
yeah. Um, what else do you
I
got?
mean, we are obviously a Boise State central podcast,
Of
so
course.
kind of give us a little. I know I've seen some of your videos. You've talked about Boise State and the Mountain West, but what are you expecting from them or players to watch, and what just overall for this year?
Yeah, I think they were selected. I think y'all are one in the preseason poll, which like it doesn't matter much, but especially in the Mountain West, as y'all know, like I feel like there's always like 6 or 7 teams, and they just beat each other every night, every other night, and stuff like that. And I think that's the way this year, where there's 7 teams. I don't think one is super separated from the rest. And I think you could argue 3 or 4 different ones to start at the top for a power ranking or whatever. I like the Boise squad. Tyson being there back again, obviously, is everything because I know there's so many new faces. There's a lot of freshmen and transfers, which is a little worrisome almost. But when you have a guy like Tyson, I think Andrew Meadows still there. There's a couple of guys still there, right? But a lot of new faces with what is a program that's used to being banking off experience, will be interesting to watch. I still think San Diego State's the team to beat in the Mountain West because they've had the most success in the last few years, especially in the tournament, obviously. Kind of going off one Final Four run for the most part, but the Mountain West has like failed to meet expectations in the tournament every year. And I'm not trying to tug on any strings right now, by the way. I'm sorry if I
No,
am.
no, we
We
we've
yeah,
discussed this
we're
a,
completely
a
Okay.
couple
biased
times,
now.
so
All right, all right, all
we
right. I'm just
do
making sure. I don't
understand
want to.
the going into this year. We kind of talked about it with Nick with Mid Major Madness. We talked to him
Yep.
a little bit about it, but like, and I guess I'll ask you just the same question. Like, do you think that the committee just maybe treats it differently going into this year with the struggles in the tournament, which is not it's tough to say that because obviously I don't want that, but there could be committee members who say we gave them 7 bids, we gave them 6 bids, do we give them
Yeah.
4? Like I don't know if you can
Yeah.
justifiably do that, but I
They
don't know.
if they do, they're not doing their job properly because they have a certain criteria to how they're supposed to select teams to get in and seed
Mhm.
them. And if they go, they have a thing called the eye test, which is BS. It's just an
Yeah.
excuse for them to be like, you know what, I don't know, Carolina or UCLA, they're on the cusp of getting in, get them in there just for ratings or
It's more
whatever.
of a logo test to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, and it's kind of BS, but they will use it in dire situations. It's not fair because especially now, teams change so much year to year. So Boise State and San Diego State from last year are completely different teams for the most part. Most of the Boise roster is new. Um, so I don't think it's fair to hold last year's results as a team and definitely as a conference accountable because Utah State getting their doors blown out in the second round doesn't shouldn't affect this year's
Yeah.
UNLV team. Like that's BS. There will be people in the room probably that say, guys, we did this with the Mountain West. Like we can't do this again. Let's take a team out. Let's put in the 19th Big 12 team or Big 10 team instead that went 500 and there will be people who will do that, and I get that. But like I said, they're different teams, and they have certain criteria they have to go by. And the Mountain West got the right amount of teams in last year. Like they were justifiably a very good conference, as you all know. So I don't think they should, but I also think this might not be as elite of a year for the Mountain West. So it might end up balancing out.
One of the mid-major teams that you brought up and you were going to see is GCU.
Mhm.
I really like them, and they don't recruit at the level that they're at. Like they are
Yeah.
recruiting to win multiple tournament games
Yep.
in March. And what is your kind of take on them going into this year? They had a great year last year. Return Grant Foster is a great player. Like, what do you think about them this year?
Yeah, that team's absolutely loaded. You said it. They are not a whack team. That is some crazy stuff right there. They got on their roster. They brought in crazy transfers. They returned basically everybody except for like one starter, I think it was. I forget which one's not going to be there, but they have a crazy loaded roster with experience, tournament experience, and winning tournament experience, which is the biggest thing. Tyan is awesome. He probably should be an All-American this year if he plays like he did last year, and if the team plays like they did last year. They're very good, and it's I've never seen an athletics program at all, especially a basketball school, on such a fast track of growth. Like they were an online school only like 6, 7 years ago or something like that, and now they have like this gated, beautiful campus and like this massive fan base and like the biggest party in college basketball in their arena, and like they're amazing. Like you said, they have crazy amount of NIL and resources to recruit really good players and kids want to go there. And now they're going to the WCC, and they're probably going to get poached to the Pac-12 also, like Gonzaga did. So it's crazy to see that, but I'm excited to go out there to see it in person because I've heard incredible things, and the team is going to be unbelievable. So
Yeah. I mean I've been to a GCU game probably like 5 years ago, so obviously they weren't as good. But yeah, it's pretty electric when you get to go into that small arena. But kind of back to what you said about the eye test. My thing is like these bracketologists will maybe watch a team in one of their last few games. Meanwhile, people like you and mid-major madness are watching from November all the
yeah,
way to April. So I feel like that shouldn't be how you judge a team compared to the fifth
yeah.
best or seventh best team in a power conference.
Yeah, and these games that people don't realize this in February, people completely forget about this, but the games that are going to be played in a week and beyond that, those are the games that really change seeding and stuff like that because like they'll give more leeway and the the efficiency ratings and the statistics and analytics will too to the in-conference games where when you're Purdue and you lose at Northwestern, it's okay because there's a huge factor of conference play and scheduling and stuff like that that's kind of factored into it. And there's also a million conference games, but the out of conference games and playing good teams beating good teams or playing well against them, and when you play bad teams, kicking the shit out of them. Excuse me, kicking the crap out of them, whatever. Um, those things matter in November and in early December, and people don't realize that. And there's context with everything. There's injuries, there's guys coming back and being out later in the year, and even there's non-injury things, and there's guys that are just unhealthy or not playing well for a certain reason, and it changes throughout the year. And they are just the committee's super selective with what context they actually want to use, and it's just unfair. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, my last thing is, the kind of one of the storylines going into this year is UConn going for their third national championship in a row. Kind of added a transfer in Aiden Mahaney from St. Mary's is a good player. What do you think of the Huskies going into this year if they can pull off the three-peat national championship? Insane thing to even think about, but it's just
yeah,
where we're at.
they definitely can. I mean, I would be an idiot to say they can't. I've doubted UConn in the past too much. I won't do it again, and I just refuse to be look like an idiot again. The thing that makes me think so confident that they definitely can and honestly might is they from the first title, so 2 years ago, to the title team last year, the roster was super different.
Mhm.
They had a lot of guys that were on the team that stepped up. Like Klingon was playing backup behind Sonogo, but he was obviously going to be good. Tristan Newton wasn't playing in a huge role at all. The first title year, he was playing a decent chunk, but he wasn't the guy he was last year. And a lot of their guys were breaking out and stepping up, and they brought in new pieces also. And I'm drawing a blank. Stephon Castle, freshman, and Cam Spencer, who's like the elite role player. They did the same thing this year. They kind of like have Hassan Diarra and a couple of the guys ready to step up. And then they also bring in the transfers they need. They have a couple of freshmen that they need. They have Alex Caravan and they're returning experience from the starting five. And it's the same kind of thing where like, okay, like you think they're not that good on paper, but they actually are good enough. And the system is just like, it's unbelievable. Last year was one of the most dominant seasons I've seen ever. So it was crazy.
Yeah, I like you said, like I kind of did the same thing, like you were saying, like maybe huge changes, and now I like Danny Hurley. That dude just gets it done, and he's fiery, and I love that in a coach, and I just like I'm not just until someone takes it away. I think you just got to say they're on their way again, so we'll see.
Yeah, exactly. I think they'll end up not winning a title just because 2 years of so much success, teams are going to study every ounce of what you're doing, especially in the Big East games and stuff. And they're not going to figure you out, but they'll, and at least a little bit to give you some worrisome games and some nights, especially in the tournament. So I would take the field if it was them versus the other 360 whatever teams, but it's you never know. So
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, I think that's all
That's
we
all
have.
I got.
Yeah.
So appreciate you coming on and talking with us. It was fun, and maybe we'll talk to you later in the year, and we'll do a little update or something going on. But enjoy going out to different places. That's super cool. Getting to visit all these different venues and stuff. That'll be we'll keep an eye on you and your travels and all that stuff.
for sure, I appreciate you having me on, and I'm gonna try to get to Boise. When I come, I'm getting an Ashton Genty shirt in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah. You gotta get
See
you
it.
gotta get one
Yeah,
of these
Yeah.
Heisman ones.
I need one exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Sure.
anytime you just text us and we got you. So just let us know. Make
yeah.
sure you guys follow Ryan on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter. He does great content. He has the is your trademark is the trapezoid of excellence, I believe.
I guess it is. I did never meant it to be that way. I just like was joking around on Twitter one day, and here we are. So I guess so.
Awesome.
Well, we appreciate it, and yeah, make sure you guys follow Ryan, and well, thank you.
No doubt.
All right, great interview with Ryan. Great talk about we kind of got into some of the bigger names in college basketball going into this year. We did our preview of the Mountain West a little earlier with Nick and Mid Major Madness, and now Ryan kind of getting into some of the big names and obviously UConn going for the three-peat. Some key names kind of going into the year. So a fun interview, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you to Ryan for joining.
All right, let's get into some. We'll talk about college football. Obviously, last week, Friday night, we saw Boise State go down to Vegas and play a really, really tough game. I thought UNLV was really good, and I am hoping to see them again, maybe on the blue for the Mountain West Championship game. I think it was a good matchup. I thought they did, the best team to really defend Ashton Genty, even though I think he finished with 130 some yards. They really made him earn it. But he got his. He got a touchdown. What was your kind of takeaway from that game? I thought there was some. It was just a really, really hard fought battle.
Yeah.
Honestly.
No, credit to UNLV, because kind of watching this was kind of the first game where you look at it and you're like, oh shoot, Ashton Genty's human. Basically,
Yeah.
he kind of got banged up a little bit. He had 33 carries, which was his career high, I believe. But yeah, I mean, kind of as you can see, I got my Ashton Genty shirt repping Heisman.
That's awesome.
But it's kind of funny how in the national media, how when Genty has, like, this is a good game for any other running back, but when he has an okay game for his standards, he automatically just drops.
Yeah.
And I mean, Dylan Gabriel had a great game. Travis Hunter obviously had one of his best games, I would say, this year. But that's just kind of funny how the narrative is.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. I mean.
And they had they were doing 8-man, 9-man box.
Yeah, and I can't remember his name. UNLV's linebacker. He was a preseason Mountain West Player of the Year on defense. They did the best job of anyone Boise State has played in wrapping him up, being the most physical team you could be with him, and late in that game when he was making some of these runs where he's really battling for 4 or 5 yards, they were picking him up off the ground. You could tell he was just really beat, but did what he had to do. And I thought Maddox played a really good game. Didn't turn it over. Just really did what we've been expecting of him, kind of this whole year since that Oregon game, where they just kind of take care of business. And it was a huge win, obviously a key win for the Broncos going forward. And I thought you need to have these kind of games to showcase that toughness that they have. And I think UNLV definitely gave them a big shot, but to be able to, especially that last drive, I think they went 8-minute drive to just end the game. Mm-hmm. You need to have those. You couldn't have gone 3 and out, give it back to them. I thought the defense was good. UNLV's a really good offense. I thought the defense was a lot better than what we've seen kind of in previous games. They have really good receivers. Their quarterback's really mobile, and I don't know. You're expected to give up a few plays to those type of guys, and Ricky White, he's a really good receiver for UNLV. You're expected to give up a few plays, but I thought at the end of the day, when you look back at it and you kind of go, you know what, this is a game that was probably needed for Boise State to kind of judge the rest of the season, and now you're kind of just battling through, making sure you're healthy, and get to come home for 2 straight games, which will be nice. And I think it just shows the toughness of the team that Boise State has.
No, you're right. The defense definitely stepped up, and now it's just kind of not trying to take your foot off the gas pedal.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't play the greatest teams these next couple of weeks, but you just got to keep going. And I know San Jose State in a few weeks is pretty good, so just take it week by week and keep playing how they
obviously
play.
a San Diego State team coming to the Blue on Friday. Again, like you said, just can't take your foot off the pedal going into that game. It's just going to be one of those games where you gotta strike first. I think Ashton, we'll see. I assume he's no one's healthy by any means at week 10 of the college football season. No one's going to be 100%, but hoping his arm was okay. We didn't really find out what was wrong, but he kind of just twisted something or something along those lines.
Hyperextension.
Yeah, something. He had kind of a wrap on his arm. I'd assume he probably has something like that going on. But yeah, just keeping it week by week. You've done your job so far. There's still a lot of football to be played, and just inching towards that, great season that we've been talking about. This is just exactly what you needed to do, especially this game that was circled in Vegas. It was a record crowd that they'd have at Allegiant Stadium for a UNLV football game, and You went on the road and got the job done. Now you get to come home and play San Diego State and then Nevada the following week. So it'll be fun, and just continue to see Ashton Genty. Obviously, the Heisman voters probably didn't watch, or I don't know what the hell they were doing, but he had a off night, I guess you could continue. I mean, we just keep saying this, but he's done what he needed to do. I mean, every game this season, and continue to be impressed with, especially last week where it was he had to earn every yard he had. He still had 132 yards, still had a great game. So I was impressed with kind of the team effort on that one too. But
yeah, other games around the country, A&M beats LSU to go 5-0 in the SEC.
Yeah,
which is
it's insane.
Their first place alone, I believe, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
They have a big game against South Carolina. We'll get into. Colorado might actually be good.
Yeah, well, it's probably thanks to us, so maybe we should just stop talking about them because we stopped talking about them, and now I don't think they've lost since we kind of have been, we brought them up the first couple episodes and just like kind of just saying, I don't know, and now all of a sudden they've just rattled off games, and they're pretty solid team, I would say. You know, they don't make the same mistakes it seems like that they were last year, which is improvement. You know, for sure.
I mean, they've got some big wins against Kansas State and that Baylor Hail Mary.
Yeah.
They beat a good Cincinnati team. Do they play this next week? Or they have a bye?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, we'll see how they do. Maybe they have a bye. I don't know, but
I was watching. One of the things that I was going to bring up with you is and it's taken me about 10 weeks. I realized that one of the biggest differences between Pac-12 football and Big Ten football is a lot of these Big Ten teams, they're just not capable of coming back. Like, we're so used to, the Pac-12 after dark and teams going up 42-10, and then all of a sudden it's a comeback. Like, I was watching that game, 21-3. It's over. It's over. This game's over.
That is very.
And it's a different feel for, especially being out on the West Coast and watching Pac-12 all my life, and now I'm going, Illinois just doesn't. They're not coming back. This game's over. It's taken me a while to realize how different it is. In now that these teams have moved to these different conferences, most of these teams are built on run game, and most of these teams are built on, the moment that they're forced to pass or anything, it just becomes it's just over. And that's what I kind of felt watching that Oregon game last week, honestly.
No, I would agree. One thing that thinks from last year was what I think of is when Stanford came back.
Exactly. Yeah.
At Colorado, that happened almost every week in the Pac-12. People from the East Coast would go to bed, and all of a sudden they'd wake up, and somehow this team would come back. And even I would, because I'd be like, "Oh, this game's over."
Yeah, the offenses are so electric, the defenses are so it's very easy to come back into the game. And in those big games, too, in these huge comebacks, the offenses are still throwing the ball, so you get pick sixes and all sorts of stuff. And now Oregon just had to run the ball. They went up 28-3, 21-3, and you're like, they can just run the ball, and I think they only had 3 points in the second half, and they still covered. They still blew out Illinois. It's such a big difference in styles of play that we're seeing, and taking some adjustment, but I think I finally understand now how a lot of these Big Ten teams feel day in and day out. It's kind of demoralizing, honestly.
That is an interesting that you notice that, because that is true. If you think about it, but
should we get? Let's get into this week.
Let's do it. It's all right slate.
Yeah, it's not a bad slate. One of the weird things about this slate that I saw was, we're in Mountain Time. There's no late kickoff. 6 p.m. is the latest kickoff this weekend.
That's weird. Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe a bunch of West Coast teams have a bye, or
a lot of them. I don't know if they're on whatever Friday night and stuff, but
it could be because of the conference realignment. All these teams have a away games too. So.
That's what I was kind of thinking too, but just a little weird. So there's no late night.
Nope.
Not like there's ever been great games this year, super late, but anyway. First game that I got is the big one. Kind of mad this isn't the late night whiteout at Penn State, but it'll be a really good game. Ohio State at Penn State, the number 4 versus number 3 team in the country.
Yeah, that would have been cool. Who does Penn State have as their whiteout?
I think they have Washington later in the year, which
mean,
I don't think it's necessarily their choice all the time,
Okay.
just depending on the times. But this one's the big noon thing, so
Okay, that makes sense. But Ohio State coming off a loss. That was
they won last week, but they
That was a
didn't
while
look good
ago,
doing
yeah.
it against Nebraska.
Yeah. But against Oregon, that was their last kind of tough game, and I think they're gonna have another tough game. I'm going Penn State.
Yeah, they're kind of Ohio State is kind of all out of whack. They have a bunch of injuries on their line that I've kind of noticed last week. They had another guy go down. They have such great athletes, and it's just they didn't really try to throw the ball a whole lot, and they have probably the best wide receiver group in the country. I think Penn State also wins this game, which makes the Big Ten race even crazier because it'll be, I think Penn State, Indiana, and Oregon, they all don't play each other, and they could all be undefeated at the end of the year. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I'm gonna take Penn State on that one too. Another ranked matchup, SMU, kind of two surprise teams, SMU and Pitt. Pitt's undefeated. SMU has 1 loss, I believe. Who do you got in that one?
Yeah, that first game against Nevada that SMU played,
Yeah.
they were about to lose, and everybody's like, "Oh, SMU sucks. They shouldn't be in the
Yeah.
ACC." But now they're 22nd in the nation, and
Yeah.
they have been rolling lately. So I think I'm gonna go SMU as well, just because they're at home and they just continue that momentum.
Yeah, I caught a little bit of Pitt last week. They played right before the Boise State game, so I was watching a little of them. But I don't know how great they are because they were playing Syracuse, and Kyle McCord threw I think 5 interceptions and 3 pick sixes. So I don't think you can count on that week in and week out. So I'll also take SMU, and that's definitely 2 teams that we weren't expecting to be. Pitt 7-0, SMU 7-1 going into this week, but that'll be a fun game. An old Pac-12 matchup, USC goes to Seattle. 2 teams probably weren't hoping to be. I think both teams are 4-4 going into this week. Both teams not lived up to expectations so far this year, but who do you got in that one?
Yeah, I just feel like USC always plays well in Seattle. I've been to 2 in my life. I've been to 2 games where USC has been in Seattle against Washington, and they've won both. So I'm making another one.
Yeah, didn't they beat that team that went to the playoff that year? I think in Seattle.
Yeah.
That Washington team. Yeah, I think Washington desperately needs to win this game, but yeah, I think USC is superior. Washington's just a goofy team this year. They have a good offense, but they don't score much. It's just bizarre. They struggled last week against Indiana. Obviously, a big game for the Hoosiers, but I'll take the Trojans in that one. Oregon, number 1 in the country, still. They go to Michigan, the Big House. I think just a tough game to go there. Travel across the country. It's a big game, regardless of how Michigan's season's gone. But who do you think wins that one? Oregon favored by 14.5, which is
14.5.
And I also think, sorry not to cut you off.
No,
I also think the over under is 40 something, 41.
Oh, okay.
So they really think it's going to be low scoring, 20 something to 20s to teens type thing.
14.5 seems like a lot for this game, just because Oregon's playing in the Big House for the first time as a Big Ten member, and they've been rolling and they got all this momentum, and it almost feels like a trap game. It's kind of weird saying that at Michigan, but I think Oregon is going to pull it off. It might be a little closer than some people would think.
Yeah, last week I was thinking the same thing about Illinois and kind of the physicality of Big Ten football and that being a factor, and that wasn't last week. I still think Michigan has a lot of good players on their team. Like they're not bad. Like they have NFL talent on their roster. Illinois doesn't. It's just Michigan's offense is just Oregon needs or if Oregon can score 30 points, they're going to win the game. I don't see Michigan being able to regardless of, if Oregon scores 28 points, that'll be the lowest they've scored, I think, in the Big Ten play, and I think that's capable of winning this game by 10 points, honestly. So I think it will be a tough game. You're going to a great environment. It'll be a challenge. But right now, I just think Oregon's rolling at a speed that's a little different for some of these for Michigan with their offensive struggles. So I'll take the Ducks again. A&M trying to stay alive with that undefeated record in the SEC. They go to a pretty tough place to play too in South Carolina, kind of a frisky team down there. But who do you got in that one?
Yeah, I'm gonna take Texas A&M. I think they can continue to keep going, and I mean they're having a great season. Like nobody really thought they would be good, but nobody thought they would be in first place probably right now.
Especially after the week 1 loss,
Yeah, and you got teams like Texas and Georgia up there, so I think they're gonna keep going.
Yeah, me too.
Remain undefeated.
I hope so. I think I like that kind of factor of now everyone's kind of played. I don't know the schedule for later in the year, but they're sitting alone up top of the SEC, which is not what we think in Week 10 going into this year. So I like that. Those are all the ones I had, but Boise State plays at home on Friday against San Diego State. Should be a game that is winnable for the Broncos, and just hoping to see our guy Ashton Genty just continue to roll and just get rid of this. Maybe put up some numbers that get the Heisman voters to question their decisions after last week. Maybe so.
We'll see. Hopefully.
And then I mean that's all I got for college football.
The next episode you watch, it will be college basketball season officially underway. So
yeah, we'll have some. I think that Tuesday. Gonzaga Baylor. Maybe we'll watch that a little bit. Watch that and do the podcast or something. And that'll be a fun one to watch and up in Spokane. But good episode with Ryan as well. Hope you guys enjoyed that interview. That was fun. And we will see you guys next week. College basketball has finally arrived. So
yes, sir. Let's go. All right. Appreciate it.